7 signs someone is lying to you. Stoic philosophy. Let's face it, people lie more than we'd like to admit, and it's not just the random strangers we come across. Sometimes it's the people we're closest to, your friend, your partner, even a family member. We all want to believe we're good at detecting dishonesty, but the reality is, we often miss the signs because deep down, we'd rather trust than question. I know the feeling all too well. There was a time I thought I had a solid read on people, until someone I deeply trusted deceived me for months. The signs were all there, the subtle shifts in how they acted, the overly detailed excuses, the defensiveness. But I ignored them, convincing myself it was nothing to worry about. The truth is, deception is more common than we think. And the moment you accept that, you can start noticing the patterns that give it away. So, if you're ready to see past the masks people wear, here are 7 undeniable signs someone is lying to you. Prepare yourself. It might be someone closer than you'd expect. Welcome to Stoic in Your Life. 1. Quick to change the subject. Ever notice how some people seem to have a sixth sense for dodging questions, shifting the conversation like they're in a game of verbal dodgeball? It happens fast. You bring up something significant, perhaps something you're deeply invested in, and before you know it, they've steered the conversation into the territory of triviality. Suddenly, instead of discussing a meaningful topic, you're caught up in a conversation about an entirely unrelated subject. They'll slip into talking about something else, anything else, just to escape the pressure of facing what's real. This can be one of the first subtle signs someone is lying, or at least avoiding a truth they're not ready to confront. I remember being in a relationship where this happened constantly. At first, I didn't realize what was happening. Whenever I'd try to discuss important topics like future plans or how we'd handle difficult situations, they'd expertly change the subject to something mundane, like what we should have for dinner or something amusing they saw online. At first, I thought I was being too intense, or that they just weren't ready to have that conversation. But here's the truth. They were avoiding it. It was about more than just discomfort. It was about not being able to face a deeper truth, and I allowed it because I wanted to maintain peace. This tactic of avoiding crucial conversations is common because facing the truth can be incredibly uncomfortable. Marcus Aurelius, one of the most revered Stoic philosophers, once said, "If it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it." This sentiment captures the heart of the issue. When someone is quick to change the subject, they are dodging responsibility, not just the conversation. It's not a matter of being forgetful or distracted. It's a sign of something deeper. By avoiding the subject, they're avoiding accountability. Stoicism teaches us that confronting the truth is essential for growth and integrity. And when someone avoids doing that, they are showing where their priorities lie. Comfort over clarity. I learned this lesson the hard way. Every time I allowed the conversation to change, I was giving that person the permission to keep me in the dark. I told myself it wasn't a big deal, that things would eventually work themselves out, but I was wrong. Avoiding a difficult topic doesn't protect you from conflict, it invites dishonesty into the relationship. By refusing to push for honesty, we allow lies to take root, not in the form of outright falsehoods, but in the subtle shifts in behavior, in the deflections, and in the avoidance. Stoicism, particularly the teachings of Marcus Aurelius, reminds us to face discomfort head-on. In his Meditations, he wrote, "Waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be one." When someone avoids a difficult conversation by changing the subject, they are not only avoiding the topic, but avoiding the hard work of being truthful, both with themselves and with you. This isn't just about words, it's about action. When someone values you, they will face uncomfortable truths, even when it's hard. Avoidance is a sign of dishonesty, not just to you, but to themselves. In modern life, we often think it's better to maintain harmony, to avoid pushing people too hard, especially those we care about. But we must remember that harmony built on avoidance is fragile, and when trust begins to crumble, the entire foundation of the relationship falls apart. Whether it's a partner, friend, or colleague, allowing someone to change the subject and avoid responsibility isn't about keeping the peace. It's about enabling deception. And the longer it goes on, the harder it becomes to untangle the web of half-truths and omissions. So, what's the solution? Don't let people off the hook. That doesn't mean you need to be confrontational or accusatory, but it does mean setting a standard of honesty in your relationships. Marcus Aurelius advised, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." This quote reminds us that we control how we react to others' attempts to evade the truth. It's within our power to maintain a standard of integrity, both in how we conduct ourselves and in what we expect from others. If someone changes the subject, gently guide the conversation back. It's not about being difficult or trying to catch someone in a lie. It's about creating an environment where truth is valued over comfort. When someone avoids important conversations, they're avoiding the responsibility that comes with being truthful. Marcus Aurelius's teachings remind us that truth is the foundation of any meaningful connection, and to avoid it is to weaken the very bond you're trying to protect. So, next time someone is quick to change the subject, don't let them. Bring the conversation back to where it matters. Because as hard as it may be to confront the truth, it's infinitely more valuable than living a lie. And as Stoicism teaches us, it is in facing reality, however difficult, that we find true strength. The quicker we recognize these signs, the quicker we can address the real issues at hand, fortifying our relationships and our lives with honesty, clarity, and ultimately, peace of mind. 2. Body turned away from you. Have you ever been in a conversation with someone who, although they're speaking to you, subtly angles their body away, almost as if they're trying to escape without leaving? Their words may be saying, "I'm here, I'm listening," but their body tells an entirely different story. Something like, "I wish I could be anywhere else right now." This might seem like a small, almost insignificant detail, but let me tell you, it speaks louder than any words they're saying. Our body language often reveals what our words conceal, and when someone's body is turning away from you, it's a strong indicator that something isn't right. This is where it gets interesting. A lot of people tend to dismiss body language, thinking it's overanalyzing or reading too much into something minor. But here's the thing. Our bodies don't lie the way our words can. When someone turns their body away from you, even slightly, it's as though their subconscious mind is trying to protect them from revealing too much. Stoic philosophy, particularly the teachings of Marcus Aurelius, urges us to pay attention to the unspoken truths in life. Aurelius said, "Everything we hear is an opinion, not a fact. Everything we see is a perspective, not the truth." The Stoics knew that appearances can deceive, but what is unspoken, what lies beneath, is often where the truth resides, and body language is one of the most reliable indicators of that unspoken truth. Have you ever noticed this behavior in your own life? Perhaps during a conversation with a partner or a colleague. Their words seem fine, but their body is creating a physical distance. It's easy to dismiss, but over time you start to see a pattern, and that pattern often points to something they're not willing to say out loud. Why do we tend to ignore these signals? Maybe it's because facing the truth is harder than simply accepting the words on the surface. But the truth, as Stoicism reminds us, is often uncomfortable, and avoiding it only prolongs the inevitable. The thing is, when someone can't face you directly, literally turning away, it's not just about physical comfort. It's about emotional avoidance. They are avoiding the truth of the conversation, the confrontation that may be required. And this doesn't just apply to major lies. It could be something small, like avoiding a difficult topic in a relationship, or larger, like evading accountability at work. Either way, their body is showing you a truth that their words can't, or won't, say. I used to overlook these signs myself, telling myself that maybe I was just overthinking things. But after witnessing this behavior time and time again, I've learned not to ignore it. Our bodies react to the truth in ways that are beyond our conscious control. When someone's body shifts away from you during a conversation, it's like their subconscious mind is trying to create distance. It's almost as if they're hoping that by physically turning away, they can hide something they don't want you to see. That's why body language, while subtle, is one of the most honest forms of communication. And when you see someone turning away from you, they're not just shifting their body, they're distancing themselves emotionally and mentally too. There's a deeper lesson here about paying attention to the subtleties of human behavior. Marcus Aurelius once wrote in his Meditations, "The best revenge is not to be like your enemy." What he meant was that we should not allow ourselves to become blind to the truth, even when it's uncomfortable. When someone's body language is signaling discomfort or dishonesty, we must be brave enough to confront it, not in an aggressive or accusatory way, but with calm, focused inquiry. In modern life, this is especially relevant in situations where truth and honesty are critical, whether in personal relationships or professional settings. Let's say you're in a meeting with a colleague who subtly turns away when you ask them about a project's progress. Their words may reassure you that everything is on track, but that slight shift in body language tells a different story. Do you ignore it and hope for the best, or do you ask the hard questions that might reveal what's really going on? As uncomfortable as it may be, addressing these moments directly can save you from bigger problems down the line. And it's not just about catching lies. Sometimes people turn away because they feel vulnerable, and they're afraid of being truly seen. Maybe they're not hiding something malicious, but rather they're avoiding confronting their own weaknesses or insecurities. In any case, the message remains the same. If someone turns their body away from you, they're trying to create distance from the truth, whatever that truth may be. Don't ignore the subtle cues people give you with their body language. When someone turns away from you, it's a signal. Maybe it's time to ask the tough questions they're trying to avoid. It might be uncomfortable, but honesty isn't always easy. And when you notice that someone is physically distancing themselves from the conversation, don't let it slide. As Marcus Aurelius taught, waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one. This means we should strive to live with integrity, seeking truth even when it's inconvenient, and expecting the same from those around us. Truth doesn't turn its back on you, and neither should the people you trust. So the next time you're in a conversation and notice someone angling their body away, take it as a cue. Maybe it's time to dig deeper and figure out what they're really trying to avoid. Because real honesty, the kind that builds trust and deepens relationships, doesn't shy away from the truth. And if someone's body is turning away, they're telling you more than they realize. Stay aware, stay curious, and always be willing to confront the truth, no matter how subtle the signs may be. 3. Defensive without cause. Have you ever asked someone a simple question, something that seems completely innocent, only to have them respond as if you've just accused them of a serious crime? Maybe it was something like, "Did you take the last slice of pizza?" And instead of a casual yes or no, you're hit with a defensive rant about how they would never do such a thing, and how offended they are that you even asked. It's an overreaction, a red flag that often screams, "I'm hiding something." This kind of reaction, getting defensive without cause, is one of the biggest signs someone might not be telling you the whole truth. It's a classic move. When there's nothing to hide, there's no reason to react so aggressively. But when someone is feeling guilty or covering something up, that defensiveness becomes their shield. Let me share a story that perfectly captures this. I was once involved in a group project, and there was one teammate who always seemed a little off whenever I asked about his progress. I'd ask something simple like, "How's the report coming along?" A perfectly normal, straightforward question. Instead of a simple answer, I'd get a barrage of defensiveness. "Why do you think I'm not doing my part? I've been working so hard. You're always micromanaging me." Now, this was the same guy who would spend our meetings scrolling through his phone and rarely contributed much. Sure enough, when the deadline rolled around, we found out he hadn't done much of his share, and all that defensiveness had been his way of trying to hide it. He wasn't angry because I'd questioned him. He was angry because my question got too close to revealing the truth. This brings up an important point. When someone gets overly defensive about something small, there's often something bigger going on. It's like the old saying, a hit dog will holler. People who are guilty, or who have something to hide, will react defensively, as if the truth might slip out if they don't put up a strong enough front. So, what's really happening when someone reacts this way? They're not just responding to the question, they're desperately trying to protect something they don't want you to see. It's not about the question being too intrusive. It's about their guilt speaking louder than their integrity. Next, in your own life. Have you ever noticed someone's defensiveness when there didn't seem to be a reason for it? Perhaps a friend, partner, or colleague blew up over something small, and at the time, you might have thought it was just a bad day. But looking back, could it have been more than that? Maybe their reaction was about deflecting attention from something they were trying to hide. People who have nothing to hide will answer your questions calmly and with clarity. But those who are covering something up will go on high alert, as though they're constantly bracing for the moment their secret is discovered. We've all been conditioned to feel like we're in the wrong for pushing too hard when someone reacts this way. But in reality, that defensiveness is often a smokescreen. It's a tactic designed to make you question your own actions rather than dig deeper into theirs. And when we let it slide, when we choose to step back instead of pressing for clarity, we allow the lie to continue. We give the person the room to hide behind their overreaction, and we end up living behind that wall of deception. Here's a powerful insight from Stoic philosophy that can help in these situations. Marcus Aurelius, a Stoic emperor, once wrote, "The object of life is not to be on the side of the majority, but to escape finding oneself in the ranks of the insane." What he meant was that just because something is common, like letting someone's defensiveness stop you from seeking the truth, doesn't mean it's the right thing to do. Stoicism teaches us to value truth and integrity above comfort, to focus on what's real rather than what feels easier in the moment. When someone's defensiveness is pushing you away from the truth, it's your responsibility to stand firm, to continue seeking clarity. Let's bring this to a modern context. Imagine you're in a work meeting, and a colleague reacts defensively when you ask about a delayed project. They immediately get agitated, blaming others, and making excuses. What do? Do you back off thinking maybe you hit a nerve and should give them space? Or do you stay calm, listen carefully, and ask more questions? Defensiveness is often a sign that there's more to the story than meets the eye. If you stay curious and persistent, you'll often uncover what's really going on, whether it's a missed deadline, a hidden mistake, or even something more serious. When you encounter someone who reacts defensively to a simple question, don't be so quick to back down. Take a step back, look at the bigger picture, and ask yourself, why are they so upset over something that should have been easy to answer? Are they trying to protect themselves from the truth being revealed? By staying calm and focused, you can often see through the smokescreen they're trying to put up. It's not about being aggressive or confrontational. It's about valuing honesty and integrity over their need to keep things hidden. Defensiveness without cause is usually a sign of guilt. The people who have nothing to hide won't feel the need to turn a small question into a major accusation. They won't feel attacked because they're not guilty of anything. But those who are trying to cover something up, they'll twist themselves in knots to make sure you don't dig any deeper. Don't let their overreaction push you away from the truth. As Stoicism teaches us, we must remain calm, focused, and persistent in our pursuit of truth, no matter how uncomfortable it may be. And remember, you deserve honesty in all your relationships, whether personal or professional. So, when you see someone getting defensive without cause, take it as a sign. It's time to push a little harder and uncover what's really going on. 4. Overpolished details. Have you ever listened to someone tell a story and thought to yourself, this sounds too good to be true? The details are so perfectly crafted, the timing so impeccable, and the whole tale flows like a well-rehearsed movie script. Everything about the story seems smooth, almost cinematic, as if they've polished every part to perfection. But here's the thing. When a story sounds too perfect, it probably is. In real life, things are messy and unpredictable. And when someone's story feels over-rehearsed, that's when your internal lie detector should start beeping. I've seen this happen more times than I care to admit. Take this guy I used to know. Let's call him Jake. He could spin a story like no one else. Every time he spoke, it felt like he was narrating a blockbuster film. There was one time in particular, he told us about a business deal he supposedly closed. He described every little detail, down to the second he signed the contract and the triumphant handshake over a city skyline, as if he were James Bond himself. You could almost hear the dramatic music swelling in the background, like it was all part of some high-stakes thriller. But here's the reality. Life doesn't follow a script. It turned out that Jake had exaggerated most of the story and straight up made up the rest. His tale was polished, yes, but it wasn't real. This is where the wisdom of Marcus Aurelius and Stoicism comes into play. As Marcus Aurelius famously said, "Everything we hear is an opinion, not a fact. Everything we see is a perspective, not the truth." The Stoic approach reminds us to question things, to look beyond the surface and not to take stories at face value, especially when they seem too perfect. Life is rarely neat and tidy, and if someone's narrative feels like it's been prepped for an Oscar nomination, it's likely because they've rehearsed it, not because it's true. Here's the controversial truth. People don't usually want to call out over-polished stories because, let's face it, we love a good tale. We're drawn to narratives that are smooth and engaging. It's human nature to enjoy a well-told story. So, we let these too-good-to-be-true stories slide, even when our gut tells us something is off. This is how liars get away with it. They rely on our desire for a clean, compelling narrative. But the truth, like life, is rarely that convenient. It's often messy, full of loose ends and imperfections, and when someone's story feels like it's been too perfectly packaged, you're probably dealing with fiction. In modern life, we're bombarded with stories all the time, whether it's at work, on social media, or even in our personal relationships. People are constantly trying to present the best version of themselves, and sometimes that means polishing the truth a little too much. But here's where it gets important. When someone over-polishes the details, they're not just trying to impress you, they're trying to control the narrative. They want you to believe a version of events that benefits them, whether it's to make themselves look better or to hide something they don't want you to see. It's like they're the director of their own movie, and you're the audience expected to clap along, never questioning what's real and what's been fabricated. Marcus Aurelius, in his Meditations, advises us to live in accordance with nature, meaning we must accept the chaos and imperfection of life. When we encounter someone whose story seems too flawless, we should remember that perfection is rarely part of the human experience. Real-life stories have rough edges, unexpected twists, and details that don't always align. If someone's telling you something that sounds like it was designed to win an award, it's probably because they're selling you an illusion. I learned this firsthand when I started digging deeper into Jake's stories. I'd ask for more details, and that's when things began to unravel. The more I pushed, the more cracks appeared in his narrative. Suddenly, his once flawless tale of success became awkward and patchy. It's a pattern you'll see often with liars. They can rehearse their story, but they can't handle the follow-up questions. Real life is full of inconsistencies, and when someone's story is too smooth, it's because they've put more effort into creating a fantasy than sharing the truth. The above story teaches us don't be swayed by perfection. Life, as Stoicism teaches us, is complex, messy, and full of imperfections. And that's a good thing. When someone's story seems too polished, too perfect, it's likely because they're trying to sell you a version of reality that benefits them, not you. And here's where your role becomes crucial. When you hear a story like this, don't just sit back and enjoy the show. Ask questions. Challenge the narrative. Life doesn't need to be perfect, to be honest. And if someone isn't willing to show you the imperfections, they're probably not showing you the truth at all. The deep message here is that truth isn't about having a perfect story. It's about being real, raw, and honest, even when it's uncomfortable. The next time you hear a story that's too smooth, too overpolished, don't just take it at face value. As Marcus Aurelius said, the object in life is not to be on the side of the majority, but to escape finding oneself in the ranks of the insane. Don't let your desire for a good story cloud your judgment. Stay curious, stay skeptical, and dig deeper. The truth is worth it. Remember, real trust and real relationships are built on honesty, not fairy tales. Life doesn't come in perfect packages, and neither should the stories we're told. When someone presents you with a flawless narrative, it's time to ask yourself what they're really trying to hide. Ask questions, stay alert, and don't be afraid to look behind the curtain. Perfection is often the mask that deception wears, and if you're willing to dig a little deeper, you'll find that the truth, while messy, is always more valuable than a well-polished lie. If you've made it through the video, you're already taking steps to sharpen your perception. Go ahead and comment, "I seek clarity," if you're ready to apply these Stoic insights in your life. And remember, the journey towards truth and wisdom doesn't end here. Stick around for more content to elevate your mind. 5. Listen to understand, not to respond. Listening is one of the most powerful skills we often overlook, especially when it comes to truly understanding others. It's easy to think that charm is all about saying the right things, but in reality, it begins with the ability to listen. Really listen. Too often we get caught in a cycle of waiting for our turn to speak, crafting our next brilliant response in our heads while the other person is still talking. And by doing that, we miss the point of the conversation entirely. Instead of connecting with the person in front of us, we make them feel invisible, unheard, and ultimately unimportant. Let's see how many times have you caught yourself nodding along, pretending to engage in a conversation, but really you're just waiting for the moment to share your thoughts. I've done it, and I'm sure you have too. But here's the hard truth. If you're not listening to understand, you're wasting not only your time but also the other person's. People can feel when you're not fully present, when you're more focused on what you're going to say next than on what they're telling you. And that's where the disconnect begins. As Marcus Aurelius once said, "We have 2 ears and 1 mouth, so we should listen more than we speak." It's a Stoic principle that resonates deeply because it reminds us that wisdom lies in understanding, not in dominating a conversation. I used to think that being a good conversationalist meant having all the right responses. I believed that offering advice or jumping in with a solution would show people that I cared. But one day, during a conversation with a colleague who was clearly struggling, I did something different. Instead of cutting in with advice or trying to fix the situation, I just listened. No interruptions, no interjections, just pure, undivided attention. By the end of that conversation, they said something that hit me hard. "I've never felt so heard." That moment taught me an invaluable lesson. People don't always need your solutions. Sometimes what they truly need is to feel understood, to know that someone is willing to hear them without the pressure of having all the answers. So let me ask you, when was the last time you listened, really listened, without the intent to respond? When was the last time you allowed someone the space to fully express themselves without preparing your own counterpoints in your head? In a world that's full of noise, where everyone is constantly vying for attention, giving someone your undivided attention is one of the greatest gifts you can offer. Listening to understand rather than to reply creates a deeper connection, a bond that goes beyond the superficial. It makes the other person feel valued, respected, and seen, something we all crave in our daily interactions. In your life, how much stronger could they be if you made a conscious effort to listen more deeply? When you listen to understand, you're not just building a relationship based on words. You're building one based on trust and empathy. This is particularly important in situations where someone might not be telling you the whole truth. A person who's lying might speak in half-truths, dodge certain topics, or shift the conversation. But by listening intently, you can pick up on these subtle cues. Stoicism teaches us to observe the world around us carefully and to be present in the moment, and nowhere is this more important than in our conversations. A good example of this in modern life could be a work setting. Imagine you're in a meeting, and a colleague is explaining a problem they've encountered. Instead of jumping in with a solution, you take the time to fully listen, asking clarifying questions when needed but never cutting them off. What you may find is that the problem they're describing isn't just about work. It could be about something more personal, something that's affecting their ability to perform. By giving them the space to express themselves fully, you allow for a deeper connection, and in turn, you become the person they can trust. This is what separates good leaders from great ones, the ability to listen, understand, and then act, rather than the other way around. Now you might be thinking, but I don't have time to sit and listen to everyone's problems. And I get it. We live in a fast-paced world where it seems like there's no time to slow down and engage in deep conversations. But here's the thing. Listening doesn't have to be time-consuming. It's not about the length of the conversation, but the quality of your attention. When you truly listen, even for a few minutes, you make a lasting impression. People will remember how you made them feel, and more often than not, that feeling of being understood will outweigh any advice you could have given. In fact, by listening without jumping to conclusions or solutions, you might just help the other person come to their own realizations. When you're in a conversation, I challenge you to pause. Resist the urge to jump in with your opinions or advice, and instead, focus on understanding the person in front of you. This simple shift in mindset can transform not only your conversations, but your relationships as a whole. As the Stoic philosopher Epictetus reminds us, we have 2 ears and 1 mouth, so that we can listen twice as much as we speak. It's a principle that applies not just to the practice of Stoicism, but to life itself. If you want to build stronger connections with those around you, start by becoming a better listener. Don't just listen to respond, listen to understand. You'll be surprised at how much more you can learn, how much deeper your relationships will grow, and how valued people will feel in your presence. It's one of the most important skills you can develop, both in life and in practicing Stoicism. 6. Laughing off serious topics. Have you ever tried to bring up something serious with someone? Maybe it's a conversation about feelings, an issue that's been on your mind, or even a problem that's brewing, and instead of engaging, they just laugh it off. They chuckle, make a light joke, and move the conversation along as if it's no big deal. It's as if humor becomes their shield, their way of dodging the uncomfortable truth that's hanging in the air. At first glance, it might seem harmless, maybe even charming. You might think, oh, they're just trying to keep things light. But let me tell you, when someone uses laughter to dismiss a serious conversation, it's often a sign that they're hiding something deeper. I've seen this pattern many times. In fact, let me share a personal story with you. I was in a relationship where I started noticing this behavior. Whenever I brought up something that truly mattered, something that required real conversation, the response was always the same: laughter. I remember saying something like, "I've been feeling disconnected lately, hoping to start a heartfelt conversation about our relationship." The answer? A laugh followed by, "You're overthinking things. Just relax." That laugh wasn't about lightening the mood. It was a way to dodge the issue entirely. It wasn't long before I realized this wasn't just a one-off. Every time I wanted to address something serious, it was met with humor, sarcasm, or a quick joke. It was like trying to have a conversation with someone who had one foot out the door, ready to run the moment things got real. What I came to understand is that laughter, in these moments, wasn't innocent. It was a way to avoid accountability, a means of sidestepping the emotional work that comes with serious conversations. They didn't want to deal with the issue at hand, and humor became their way out. Here's where it gets tricky. We're conditioned to think humor is a good thing. After all, it lightens the mood, it diffuses tension, it makes us feel more comfortable. But when someone constantly laughs off serious topics, it's a red flag that they're trying to distract you from something they're not ready or willing, to confront. It's like they're slipping lies past you, hidden behind a smile. Most people let them get away with it because no one wants to be the person who pushes too hard after a joke. Think about it. How often have you dropped an important topic just because the other person turned it into something light? People laugh off serious stuff because they don't want to deal with the weight of the conversation. It's an escape route, plain and simple. They want to keep things light and breezy so you won't dig deeper. But the truth is, real conversations, the ones that matter, aren't always light or easy. They're supposed to challenge us, make us think, and push us toward honesty. And if someone can't handle that, you have to ask yourself, what are they hiding behind those laughs? When people laugh off serious conversations, they're signaling a lack of emotional maturity. It's like they're putting up a shiny facade, hoping you'll be satisfied with the surface and not look any deeper. Maybe it's because they're afraid of vulnerability, or maybe they know that if they actually talk about it, they'll expose a truth they've been burying. Either way, it's a signal that something is being avoided. And the worst part? It works more often than it should. People use humor to deflect, to make you feel like you're the one taking things too seriously. But let me tell you, there's nothing wrong with taking things seriously, especially when it comes to important matters. Now, I've seen this play out not just in personal relationships but also in professional settings. Have you ever been in a meeting where you raise a legitimate concern, and instead of addressing it, someone cracks a joke? Suddenly the room is laughing and the issue is swept under the rug. Laughter doesn't resolve anything. It may diffuse tension for a moment, but the underlying issue remains untouched. And this is true whether you're talking about work, relationships, or even personal growth. Stoicism teaches us to face reality with courage and honesty. Marcus Aurelius, a Stoic philosopher, once said, "Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one." In other words, don't dodge the hard truths. Face them with integrity. So, what can you do when someone laughs off a serious conversation? Don't be afraid to call them out, gently but firmly. A simple question like, "Why is this funny to you?" can cut through the humor and bring the conversation back to the real issue. It forces the person to confront the fact that they're using laughter as a defense mechanism. It's a way of saying, "I see what you're doing, but we still need to talk about this." Most people aren't used to being called out like that, and it can be a powerful moment of honesty. The real problem with laughing off serious topics is that it shuts down the conversation before it can even begin. It's like putting up a giant "Do Not Enter" sign on the path to real communication. If you don't address it, those important conversations, about trust, about feelings, about accountability, never happen. Everything stays on the surface, and nothing gets resolved. That's where relationships, whether personal or professional, begin to break down. When honesty is avoided, connection starts to wither. Honesty isn't always fun. It's not always lighthearted, and it's certainly not something that should be laughed away. If someone can't take serious matters seriously, it's not just about them dodging one conversation. It's about them avoiding real connection. And if they can't face the tough conversations with you, how much trust can you really place in that relationship? Whether it's a friend, a partner, or a colleague, real trust is built on honesty and openness, not jokes and avoidance. So, the next time you're in a conversation and someone laughs off a serious topic, don't let it slide. Ask the hard questions. Press into the uncomfortable truth. Because while laughter may lighten the moment, it doesn't erase the weight of what's really going on underneath. If they're not willing to drop the act and face the issue, then they're not being honest with you. And you deserve honesty. In life, we often encounter people who hide behind humor as a way to avoid uncomfortable truths. But as Stoicism reminds us, we must learn to face these truths head-on, with courage and clarity. Marcus Aurelius wisely wrote, "The happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts." So, instead of letting someone laugh off a serious conversation, guide the conversation back to where it belongs. Ask yourself and them, what's really going on? What are they afraid to face? And why? When you ask the right questions, you often uncover the real issue. And that's when the real conversation can begin. 7. Vagueness when pressed for specifics. Have you ever asked someone for details about something and instead of getting a clear answer, you're met with vague responses that feel like they're dancing around the truth? Maybe you pressed them for specifics, like dates, names, or facts, and what you got back was a fog of fluff, grand gestures, and non-answers. It's one of the most frustrating things to experience, and it's a massive red flag. When someone can't give you straight answers, especially when you're asking for them directly, they're most likely hiding something. It's a classic defense mechanism that liars use to avoid getting caught. They don't want you to look too closely, so they muddy the waters with ambiguity. Let me tell you about a situation from my own life that really brought this home for me. I had a coworker who would constantly brag about the big deals they were closing, always making it sound like they were on the verge of something huge. But whenever anyone asked for specifics, details about the companies involved, the progress of the negotiations, his answers were like a masterclass in evasion. He'd say things like, "Oh, we're in the early stages, but it's really exciting. Can't talk too much about it right now, but trust me, it's going to be big." Weeks would go by, and every time we asked again, it was the same vague, non-committal response. Eventually, we found out that there were no deals at all. He'd made up most of the conversations and was bluffing the whole time, hoping that no one would push too hard for the truth. Here's where things get interesting. When someone avoids specifics like this, it's not just about being secretive, they're likely lying. Vagueness is a liar's best friend because it lets them escape accountability. Think of it like trying to catch smoke with your bare hands. You think you're getting somewhere, but it just keeps slipping away. They throw out half answers and phrases like, "It's complicated," to keep you at arm's length, hoping you'll be too polite or too distracted to press them harder. And sadly, most of us fall for it because we've been conditioned not to push too hard. We don't want to seem rude, and they count on that hesitation. People who are telling the truth don't need to hide behind vagueness. They can give you clear, straightforward answers because they have nothing to protect. If you ask them for details, they'll give you the facts. No smoke, no mirrors, just the truth. But liars? They thrive in the gray areas. They know that the more vague they can be, the harder it is for you to pin them down. It's a classic avoidance strategy, and most people fall for it because they don't want to seem overly aggressive in pushing for answers. This is where Stoicism, particularly the teachings of Marcus Aurelius, can guide us. Aurelius said, "If it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it." This wisdom reminds us that truth is clear and straightforward. Anything else should raise suspicion. Now let's be honest with ourselves. We've all been in situations where we've been vague, right? Maybe we weren't prepared, maybe we felt cornered, or maybe we just didn't want to admit we didn't know something. But there's a difference between being unprepared and deliberately avoiding the truth. An honest person will own up to it and say, "I'm not sure right now," or "Let me check on that." They don't fill the space with fluff just to sound like they're in control. The problem arises when people deliberately use vagueness as a tactic to avoid getting caught. This is a deeper issue of integrity. When someone won't give you a straight answer, they're undermining the trust in your relationship, whether that's personal or professional. They're relying on your good nature to not push them too hard. They're banking on the fact that you'll let it slide because pressing for specifics can feel awkward. But here's the truth. When you start feeling that awkwardness, that's your signal to push harder. People who can't handle being specific when asked directly are people who aren't comfortable with the truth. This is one of those uncomfortable truths that many people don't want to acknowledge. They'll make excuses for vagueness, saying things like, "Oh, maybe they're just bad with details," or "They're probably just busy." But real honesty doesn't shy away from specifics. If someone cares about being truthful with you, they'll be clear. I've learned to stop letting people off the hook with vague answers. If you want to know if someone's being straight with you, watch how they respond when you ask for specifics. Do they get uncomfortable? Do they start giving you broad, sweeping statements that don't really say anything? That's your cue to dig deeper. And if they still can't give you a clear answer, Take it as a sign that they're not being honest. People who are hiding something will always try to protect themselves with vagueness, but truth doesn't need protection. Here's the bigger picture. Honesty, while not always convenient, is clear and direct. It doesn't hide behind ambiguity or fluff. When someone refuses to give you specifics, they're afraid of what those details might reveal. It's like they're building a wall of vagueness to keep you from seeing the truth. And if they can't tear down that wall for you, then you've got to ask yourself why they're building it in the first place. This kind of behavior erodes trust faster than any outright lie because it plays on your good faith. Marcus Aurelius would remind us to waste no more time arguing what a good man should be one. In other words, don't dance around the truth, face it head on, and expect the same from others. So what can you do the next time someone gives you a vague answer when you're asking for specifics? Don't back down. You deserve clarity, and anyone who respects you will be willing to give it to you. Vagueness might feel like a small thing, but in the grand scheme of things, it's a huge indicator of deeper issues that can erode trust more quickly than you think. If someone won't give you a straight answer, it's likely because they're hiding something they don't want you to see. At the end of the day, real trust is built on clear communication, not dancing around the facts. If someone is being vague, especially when it matters most, they're showing you that they're not being honest, and you deserve better than that. Don't let anyone's vagueness erode the trust you've worked hard to build. The next time someone tries to evade your questions with fluffy answers, remember, you deserve the truth, and real honesty doesn't need to hide. As Marcus Aurelius reminds us, the best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injury. In other words, live with integrity, and don't let others' lack of clarity drag you into their fog. Thanks for watching and diving deep into Stoic philosophy with us today. If this resonated with you, drop a comment saying, "I embrace truth," to show you're on the path to seeing through deception. Stay tuned, because this is just the beginning of what we can learn together. 8. Inconsistent eye contact. One of the clearest indicators that someone might not be telling the truth is inconsistent eye contact. Eye contact plays a crucial role in honest communication, helping to establish trust and connection between people. When we are truthful, our body language tends to reflect that honesty naturally, and maintaining steady eye contact is a part of that. However, when someone is being dishonest, their eye contact can become noticeably erratic. They may avoid looking at you altogether, as if fearing that meeting your eyes will expose their lie. On the other hand, they may overcompensate by locking eyes with you in an unnatural, almost intense way, trying to convince you through sheer force of their gaze that they are being sincere. Both behaviors, though different, signal a break in the normal flow of honest communication. This inconsistency in eye contact isn't random. It's often a subconscious reaction to the guilt or anxiety that comes with lying. A person who is lying may not be aware of it, but their body reacts to the stress in ways they can't fully control. Avoiding eye contact is often tied to the discomfort of knowing they're deceiving someone, while too much eye contact can be a calculated attempt to manipulate the situation, almost as if they're thinking, "If I stare long enough, they'll believe me." It's important to remember that these behaviors are more than just habits. They're survival mechanisms for someone trying to protect themselves from being caught. Stoic philosophy, especially as taught by Marcus Aurelius, teaches us to observe more than just the surface. As Marcus Aurelius famously said, "Everything we hear is an opinion, not a fact. Everything we see is a perspective, not the truth." This wisdom is a reminder that true insight comes from understanding the deeper signals people give off, not just the words they say. In modern life, where distractions are abundant and communication often lacks depth, learning to notice these subtle shifts in behavior can be incredibly powerful. We live in a world where people are constantly presenting versions of themselves, especially through social media, or even in face-to-face interactions where truth is sometimes masked by performance. Someone's avoidance of your gaze when asked a direct question may signal that they are hiding something. Alternatively, someone maintaining an unnaturally intense stare might be overcompensating, hoping their performance will be convincing. In either case, their inconsistent eye contact can speak volumes about what they're really feeling. Think back to your own experiences. Have you ever noticed that strange feeling when someone's eye contact doesn't match the tone of the conversation? Maybe they couldn't quite look at you when discussing something sensitive, or perhaps they stared a bit too long when trying to explain themselves. These moments, while seemingly small, are key indicators that something may not be as it seems. In the end, our bodies reveal more than we think, and as Marcus Aurelius reminds us, understanding the perspectives behind what we see can lead us closer to the truth. The next time you find yourself in a conversation where someone's eye contact feels off, take a mental note. Are they avoiding your gaze entirely, or are they holding it a little too intensely, as if trying to sell a version of events? Either extreme should make you pause and consider whether the words coming out of their mouth match the truth they are trying to convey. Inconsistent eye contact, while subtle, is one of those nonverbal cues that can reveal more than any words. Learning to spot it can help you navigate conversations more effectively, leading you to see beyond the surface and understand what's really being communicated. Just as Stoicism encourages us to embrace truth and clarity, being aware of these subtle behavioral cues helps you see through deception and stay grounded in reality. 9. Excessive pausing before answering. One of the clearest signs that someone may not be telling the truth is excessive pausing before answering a question. While it's completely normal for people to take a moment to gather their thoughts, especially when discussing something complex, there's a noticeable difference when that pause stretches longer than expected. It's not about reflection, but rather about buying time. When someone is lying, their brain works overtime trying to piece together a story that seems believable. They're not just thinking about how to answer your question. They're also carefully constructing a tale that won't contradict something they've already said. This extra cognitive load leads to awkward pauses, those moments of hesitation that give them away. When someone is being honest, they don't need to filter their words or keep track of any false narratives. Their responses flow naturally because they're speaking the truth. There's no need for excessive thinking, no need to align one lie with another, just straightforward conversation. This concept ties back to the teachings of Marcus Aurelius in Stoicism. He once said, "If it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it." This Stoic wisdom speaks to the value of honesty and clarity. Someone who is telling the truth doesn't have to second-guess themselves. They simply speak because they have nothing to hide. Let me share a relatable example from modern life. Picture a business negotiation where one party is asked about the status of a project. A straightforward answer would come almost immediately, detailing progress or outlining next steps. But if the person pauses excessively before answering, stumbling over their words, it can make you wonder, are they really telling the truth? Are they trying to figure out how to reconcile the current question with something they've said before, without getting caught in a contradiction? These moments of hesitation can reveal a lot more than what's actually being said. Pausing is a natural part of conversation, but when it becomes excessive, it's worth considering why. In high-stakes situations, such as business deals or personal discussions where trust is essential, you'll often notice people taking longer to answer when the truth isn't on their side. It's almost as if their brain is screaming for more time to process the lie they're about to tell. They don't want to slip up, so they stall. Stoicism teaches us to be aware of these signs and to trust our instincts. If you sense someone is hesitating too much, it might be because they're trying to weave together a story rather than simply sharing the truth. These moments can be subtle, but they're telling. Someone who is pausing excessively might be weighing their options, not for honesty, but for a way to avoid getting caught in a lie. It's in these pauses that the truth often slips out, even when the words that follow are carefully crafted to hide it. Marcus Aurelius also emphasized that simplicity is key to living a virtuous life. In conversations, This simplicity translates to clear and straightforward communication. If someone is honest, their answers will reflect that simplicity. They don't need to overthink or pause excessively because they are grounded in truth. However, when dishonesty is at play, even the most well-rehearsed liar needs time to think through their deception. That pause is a crack in their facade, a moment where their story falters. Next time you're in a conversation and notice someone taking an unusually long pause before answering, ask yourself why. Are they genuinely thinking it through? Or are they scrambling to align their story with the lie they've constructed? These pauses, while small, can be a significant signal that something isn't right. And while pressing someone for answers may feel uncomfortable, remember that honesty doesn't require such hesitation. If they are being truthful, they won't need time to craft a response. They'll simply tell you what is. If they are pausing excessively, that hesitation could be a sign that their words are being carefully selected not to reveal the truth, but to hide it. Honesty flows freely, without excessive pausing or stumbling over words. If someone pauses too long, take it as a cue to listen even more carefully to what follows. The truth doesn't need time to be built. It just is. And in a world full of noise, being able to discern those small pauses can make all the difference in understanding when someone is being honest and when they're not. So next time you notice those extra seconds of hesitation, don't brush them off. Consider it your opportunity to dig deeper, just as the Stoics would, in search of the truth. 10. Over-explaining simple details. One of the clearest signs that someone may not be telling the truth is excessive pausing before answering a question. While it's completely normal for people to take a moment to gather their thoughts, especially when discussing something complex, there's a noticeable difference when that pause stretches longer than expected. It's not about reflection, but rather about buying time. When someone is lying, their brain works overtime trying to piece together a story that seems believable. They're not just thinking about how to answer your question, they're also carefully constructing a tale that won't contradict something they've already said. This extra cognitive load leads to awkward pauses, those moments of hesitation that give them away. When someone is being honest, they don't need to filter their words or keep track of any false narratives. Their responses flow naturally because they're speaking the truth. There's no need for excessive thinking. No need to align one lie with another, just straightforward conversation. This concept ties back to the teachings of Marcus Aurelius in Stoicism. He once said, "If it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it." This Stoic wisdom speaks to the value of honesty and clarity. Someone who is telling the truth doesn't have to second-guess themselves. They simply speak because they have nothing to hide. Let me share a relatable example from modern life. Picture a business negotiation where one party is asked about the status of a project. A straightforward answer would come almost immediately, detailing progress or outlining next steps. But if the person pauses excessively before answering, stumbling over their words, it can make you wonder, are they really telling the truth? Are they trying to figure out how to reconcile the current question with something they've said before, without getting caught in a contradiction? These moments of hesitation can reveal a lot more than what's actually being said. Pausing is a natural part of conversation, but when it becomes excessive, it's worth considering why. In high-stakes situations, such as business deals or personal discussions where trust is essential, you'll often notice people taking longer to answer when the truth isn't on their side. It's almost as if their brain is screaming for more time to process the lie they're about to tell. They don't want to slip up, so they stall. Stoicism teaches us to be aware of these signs and to trust our instincts. If you sense someone is hesitating too much, it might be because they're trying to weave together a story rather than simply sharing the truth. These moments can be subtle, but they're telling. Someone who is pausing excessively might be weighing their options not for honesty, but for a way to avoid getting caught in a lie. It's in these pauses that the truth often slips out, even when the words that follow are carefully crafted to hide it. Marcus Aurelius also emphasized that simplicity is key to living a virtuous life. In conversations, this simplicity translates to clear and straightforward communication. If someone is honest, their answers will reflect that simplicity. They don't need to overthink or pause excessively because they are grounded in truth. However, when dishonesty is at play, even the most well-rehearsed liar needs time to think through their deception. That pause is a crack in their facade, a moment where their story falters. Next time you're in a conversation and notice someone taking an unusually long pause before answering, ask yourself why. Are they genuinely thinking it through, or are they scrambling to align their story with the lie they've constructed? These pauses, while small, can be a significant signal that something isn't right. And while pressing someone for answers may feel uncomfortable, remember that honesty doesn't require such hesitation. If they are being truthful, they won't need time to craft a response. They'll simply tell you what is. If they are pausing excessively, that hesitation could be a sign that their words are being carefully selected not to reveal the truth, but to hide it. Honesty flows freely, without excessive pausing or stumbling over words. If someone pauses too long, take it as a cue to listen even more carefully to what follows. The truth doesn't need time to be built, it just is. And in a world full of noise, being able to discern those small pauses can make all the difference in understanding when someone is being honest and when they're not. So next time you notice those extra seconds of hesitation, don't brush them off. Consider it your opportunity to dig deeper, just as the Stoics would, in search of the truth. Thank you for joining me on this journey of uncovering the signs someone may be lying through the lens of Stoic philosophy. I hope the insights and skills you've gained today will not only help you see through deception in your relationships, but also guide you to live more honestly and clearly with yourself. As Marcus Aurelius said, truth does not need elaborate decoration. It shines through its simplicity. Let honesty and self-awareness be the foundation of everything you do. If you have any thoughts or experiences you'd like to share, feel free to leave a comment. Stay with us on this path of personal growth. There's so much more to explore ahead.